What's up, bitches?
Let's talk about crime.
What's up, bitches?
Hello.
We're here, as per usual. We're here to talk about some true crime. I do want to tell you, though, that I actually saw a thing on, because we're a true crime podcast, teenage kid who stabbed the other kid at the track meet, right? Carmelo Anthony stabbed the Austin kid at a track meet like a while back. I just saw when Dad and I were in Disneyland, it came across that he is being charged with first-degree murder. And they're charging him as an adult because he's 17.
Damn.
Yeah. And I actually said to your dad, I don't know how I feel about that. And then I was talking it through with him and I was like, Jesus, I think I'm getting soft in my old age, because he was like, what do you mean? And I was like, he's 17 and first-degree murder is I don't even know how they're going to swing a first-degree murder charge, because first-degree murder is pretty much planned, premeditated, like you have to have the intent. And I don't know how they're going to prove that this kid had the intention of killing somebody.
Maybe there's something that they haven't released to the public.
Well, no, I think what they're going to do is say that he showed up to the track meet with a knife in his backpack. So that shows intent. But I think that's a really big stretch. What I actually think they're doing is they're charging him with first-degree murder as an adult, and then they're going to plea him down to manslaughter, but still as an adult, and he'll get 20 years. That's what I think is going to happen. But it is one of those things that I'm looking at this 17-year-old kid and thinking, first-degree murder, that in Texas, he cannot get the death penalty because he's under 18, but he can get life in prison with no parole if he gets first-degree murder. And that, I don't know how I feel. Your dad said...
I'm fucking heartless.
Well, your dad said, when I told him that, he goes, okay, well, I could come up and say Austin also doesn't get to do anything for the rest of his life because he died. That is true. However, he was 17 years old. Remember how we constantly talk about frontal lobes and how they don't close until you're 25? This right here is exactly where this would come into play.
See, but I'm heartless because my brother did track. If I'm being completely honest, he would have been the Austin kid. He would have been the kid sticking up. So if that were to have been him,
I get that.
I'd want that kid to fucking not have a life.
I understand that. However, the part that people need to remember, though, is that we don't know the whole scenario. We don't know the whole story. We don't know how it all played out. But what I do know is that when we have that conversation of the frontal lobe, part of the problem is this scenario exactly is where that frontal lobe comes into play. It's your emotions. It's your decision making with your emotions. That is not mature enough. And so when you're in this scenario where you are in a heightened sense of whatever, and because it has already come out that he was pushed by that Austin pushed Carmelo Anthony. That's already come out. And so you're getting ready to basically fight. And this is the scenario when, if you were 25, 26 years old, you're probably not going to pull out a knife and stab somebody. You're either going to fight them or you're going to walk away.
Okay, well, selfishly at 17, I wouldn't have stabbed somebody either.
You don't know. Correct. Most likely not. But
most people don't do that.
Except for your decision, your rash, emotional decision-making skills are not mature enough to know how you'd actually react. This is why when somebody goes into a 7-Eleven and robs a 7-Eleven at the age of 15 and shoots and kills the person behind the cash register, they will not charge them as an adult, because you're 15 years old. Your brain in the moment, the emotional part of your brain just can't handle some of those decisions. And by the way, I'm going to make this a very blanket statement here. This is also why I do not think that people should be allowed in the military at 18. This is also why, because they're not emotionally
They make everything
ready.
else like drinking 21. I feel like you should legally be an adult at the age of 21.
Correct.
Not 18.
But my point is it's not like you turn 18 and magically that you're super better. It's not like that. I actually don't think the military should be recruiting at 18, because again, your emotional decision-making skills are not mature enough to handle what happens in the military, which is, in my opinion, part of the reason why we have so many people with PTSD and depression issues. So,
but how easy is it to knock down mentally an 18-year-old?
Of course.
We
know
which is
that.
A perfect
We know
reason.
that. Yes, it's because they
can
strip
beat
you down.
the fuck out of them.
Well, they don't really do that.
No,
but
like mentally, they can fuck you up. and basically
they
morph
basically
you
strip
into
you. They strip you of who you are and they build you to who they
Right,
want you to be.
right.
And that's correct. But also, so that's how impressionable an 18-year-old's mind is. So a 17-year-old is just as impressionable. So a 17-year-old's mind works just the same way, right? So that's why
I don't know who magically came up with the number 18 as you're an adult.
I don't either.
Nothing
That's
fucking
weird.
changes.
It's
at
a
that
weird
time.
thing. But my whole point is I'm not going to say anything other than I don't really know how I feel about that charge being what he gets. Okay. All I'm saying is that is the most recent news that I heard on that case. Regardless, the whole thing is really, really sad because in this scenario, a 17-year-old kid, two 17-year-old kids essentially lose their lives. One of them loses their life to death and the other one loses their life to prison. And it's unfortunate because the world that we live in, that's what it has been created. I'm really going to keep my eye on the story and I'm very curious. Like I said, my guess is that they gave him the harshest charge that they could to push for a plea deal because that's typically what they will do. And my guess is his lawyers are going to come out with like he's going to plead guilty to manslaughter and he's going to get like 15 to 20 years, but still in prison as an adult, which is fucking rough anyways. So we'll see. We'll see what happens. I highly doubt he's going to go on trial for first degree murder. I very much highly doubt that. That just seems like that's a really crazy charge. I was shocked. I wasn't shocked that he was charged as an adult. But I was shocked that he was charged with first degree murder. I thought literally manslaughter seems to be the better option because I don't think in any way, shape, or form that he showed up there with the intent to just kill somebody. And he definitely didn't show up with the intent to specifically kill that one person. So it's going to be really hard to prove that. However, they must have something or they probably wouldn't charge him. I mean, I don't know. We'll see what happens. But anyways, that's here nor there. I just wanted to share a little bit of updated news in a different news story other than Brian Koberger because that's a shit show in itself. So
yeah, we're not getting back into
we're
that
not
right
going to talk about that. What we are going to talk about today is we are going to talk about the year 1994 in New Jersey. Now, this is where 7-year-old Megan Kanka is murdered and her neighbor, Jesse Timmendequas, is held responsible for it. Now, we're going to give you a little background on Jesse. So Jesse was born April 15th, 1961, and as fucking per usual, there's not a lot of information about his younger background. Like there's information about him, but not his younger years. So unfortunately, we don't get to go, oh, he was abused as a child and that's why he turned out the way he did. We don't know. We don't know what his childhood was like. Jesse did have 2 previous convictions for sexually assaulting young girls prior to the incident that happened in 1994. So again, 1979, he is 18 years old in 1979. So that's like the most like farthest back we go. He actually pleads guilty to attempted aggravated sexual assault of a 5-year-old girl in New Jersey. What he had done is he had asked this little girl if she wanted to go look at ducks with him. And he ends up sexually assaulting this little girl. Now, he is actually given a suspended sentence for this. Now, for those of you who don't know what a suspended sentence is, this is when a judge hands out a sentence to the perpetrator, to the person, and the judge then says, however, I'm going to allow you to serve the sentence out of jail. So
that's fucking bullshit.
So, but normally there's conditions with it, right? So like if you
house arrest.
Well, it could be house arrest, but like for instance, some people, it's like let's say they get caught with like a DUI, so they get caught drunk driving. So let's say they are like, I don't want to go to jail or whatever. And let's say they say, okay, well, how about you have 6 months. You have to serve 6 months, but we'll do it suspended. If you if you go to these AA meetings for the next 6 months, that will be considered your sentence.
Signed off and
yeah. So that's normally what a suspended sentence
or
is.
Sexual anonymous,
right.
There's one for that. I don't remember what it's called.
So that is actually what happened. So the judge basically says, listen, I'm going to give you this amount of time, but what we're going to do is we're going to give it to you in a suspended sentence. So what you're going to do is as long as you promise to attend court mandated counseling for this incident, you don't have to be in jail. You can be out of jail, but going to counseling. Well, he failed to attend counseling and he was actually then put into prison for 9 months. Then in 1981, he actually pleads guilty to the assault of a 7-year-old girl. Now, he lured this girl into the woods by talking to her about firecrackers. And he was telling her they had firecrackers and he wanted to show them to her. And he brought her into the woods with him. He then attacked her and choked her. And he actually left her alone, when she started to turn blue. So he stopped choking her because she started to turn blue. And he left her there, like in the woods. She was unconscious, but she was alive. Her mother actually ends up finding her in the woods.
Oh,
could you fucking imagine?
Oh my,
right? You're like looking for your child. Oh, Jesus. So in this case, the judge actually gives him the maximum sentence for this crime, which was 10 years at the time. So he gets sent to jail for 10 years. And the judge actually says that Jesse was a compulsive, repetitive sexual offender who constitutes danger to the public at large and to young children in particular. What?
No, I'm doing the math.
Go ahead, do the math because you'll figure it out.
Because that means he would have gotten out in 91, but
Dang.
The crime happened in 94.
Yeah.
So I'm assuming, well, actually I shouldn't assume. I'm hoping that he served the 10-year sentence, but...
Well, he was sent to the Adult Diagnostic Treatment Center, which is a correctional, because at first I was like, what the fuck? But it's a correctional
what
facility.
What are these fucking names, man?
It's a correctional facility in Avenel, New Jersey. So he was sent there and he actually was he was actually released after only serving 6 years of a 10-year sentence. Which at that time was actually fairly standard. So for sex offenders, they would put them into these institutions, and after literally like not even like a little over half their time is served, they let them out.
Then what's the fucking point of telling them you have a blank sentence if you're gonna fucking just cut their sentence short anyways?
Correct. Now this facility in particular, just so you know, I was literally like, was it a prison or was it like a rehabilitation center? Like I didn't know.
Or like a mental institute?
Right. I didn't know because it doesn't say
correction.
Corrections. So it is a secure correctional facility, and it's actually one of a kind. Like there's not very many of these in the United States. And the point of this is to provide treatment and incarceration to repetitive and compulsive male sex offenders. So this is actually a facility specifically for sex offenders. So they put them in there. They go through these treatments with psychiatrists and they work on rehabilitating them. We're not going to go into it. I just have very mixed feelings about it. Personally, I just don't understand.
I think it's a crack of shit.
It's just weird. But anyways, Jesse, though, hardly participates in the program that he was sent there for.
Oh, shocker.
So what he does is he goes to this facility to serve his sentence, but he doesn't join into the program things that he should be doing to make himself better.
So yes, let's cut his sentence shorter if he's not even participating.
Right. I don't understand how that happened.
Like, if anything, I should be like, until you start participating,
right,
then you get your sentence.
Well, he was described by a therapist who worked at this facility as a whiner. Like, he whined and didn't want to do shit.
The woe is me bullshit.
And that he spent most of his time sleeping. He actually didn't do much of anything but sleep in his room. Now, a different therapist who had seen him actually had said that she felt that he was going to commit another sex crime. However, she did not think that he would ever commit murder. So like she came out and said, like, before they released him, the people who had worked with him was like, no, I think he will definitely commit another sex crime. Obviously, because he wasn't going to any of the shit to help himself. Now, it was also during his time at this facility that he meets his two future roommates, Joseph and Brian. I also think that there should be a law that they cannot all cohabitate together.
Right.
I think there should be a law that says if you're a sex offender, you're not allowed to live with another sex offender. Because that just seems really fucking whacked up.
Well, because you have to register as a sex offender and then put your location.
Right.
Well, I don't know back then, but now you have to like notify the people around you that you're a sex offender as well. Or you're supposed to, I should say.
No, I'm smiling because that's what this story's about. That's what this story's about. You'll see.
Well, I know,
that's
you
what
said
this
the
story's
neighbor.
about. This leads us to July 29th, 1994. Megan Kanka disappears from her neighborhood in Hamilton, New Jersey. And a search starts after her parents find her bike in the front yard, but she is nowhere to be found. Again, she is 7 years old. Now, again, people, in 94...
Y'all were wild back then.
Well, I was just saying, in 94, like, listen, I was, like, in middle school in 94. Like, we were outside hanging out all hours of the night in the summer, especially because this is summertime, July.
The whole street light turns on, you go home. That's not how it is.
Not in my neighborhood. No. In my neighborhood, the street lights went on. We'd go home to eat dinner, and then we'd all meet back up and play nighttime hide and go seek in our neighborhood. Throughout our whole neighborhood. We'd hide in people's yards, and we were playing till 10 or 11 o'clock at night. But all of the kids in our neighbor, like, that's just all what we were doing.
Okay, well, by the time it was 2007,
right,
when I was 7 years old, your ass was like, I'm watching you 24 fucking 7, or you're not going out there.
Yep. Yeah, it's a different time now. So yeah, so I wanted to reiterate and remind people that in 1994, it was not unheard of for people, a 7-year-old, to be outside riding her bike and playing. Like, that's not unheard of. Several neighbors come, obviously, to start help looking for Megan. So they all start looking, including the neighbor across the street, Jesse Timmendequas. Now, he lives literally across the street from the Kinka family, and he offers to help look for Megan as well, along with all these other people. Now, during the search, police are called, obviously, because now they can't find her. It's getting darker. So the police are called. And somebody actually kind of goes up to the police and says, hey, you know what? You should look at Joseph Cifelli. So Joseph Cifelli lives across the street.
The roommate.
And he lived in the home with Jesse. And this home was actually owned by Joseph's mom. And so Joseph Cifelli, this person tells the police officer, like, listen, Joseph Cifelli is a sex offender. In 1976, he had been charged with carnal abuse and sodomy of a 5-year-old girl.
Holy shit.
Yeah.
And he was out of prison? What the fuck? That's a whole other... You should
For
do that.
real.
We should do that one
For
next,
real.
'cause holy fuck.
So she's like, you might want to take a peek at him because I happen to know that he's a sex offender. So obviously the police are like, that's a great place to start. So they start looking into it. They talk to Joseph. They talk to Brian. And they talk to Jesse. So they obviously go talk to all 3 guys. Well, they find out by doing some research. They find out that Joseph Cifelli is a sex offender. They find out that Brian Argenin is also a sex offender. And they find out that Jesse Timmendequas is a sex offender. So like, okay. So they interview fucking for real. Also, Brian's mom, or Joseph Cifelli's mom, fuck you for letting your sex offender son and his 2 goddamn sex offender friends live in a house across the street from a little girl.
Well, also just fuck you for housing your piece of shit son.
For real.
Just throwing that out there.
Now, they talk to them and they find that Joseph actually has a very solid alibi for the day and the timing that Megan disappeared. Along with Brian, both of them have very solid alibis. They find out that Jesse does not have an alibi. So they're kind of like, okay. So to them, that gives them some cause to be able to search the home because they're like, well, you guys are a home full of sex offenders. And I'm going to pause.
I feel like 3 sex offenders in one house should be cause enough.
I'm going to pause here real quick because I realize I said that and I need to clarify something. I do not think that all sex offenders are bad. I personally in my life have 2 friends of mine that are registered sex offenders. And I know you're probably like, what the fuck, Trisha? Yeah, you're right. Except for what they are sex offenders for is they have to register as sex offenders because both of them were in relationships with girls that were under 18 when they were over 18. And one of them was in a very long-term, like 2+ year relationship. And after they broke up, the parents actually pressed charges against him.
Which I feel like should allowed.
Never have happened. And the second one, my friend met a girl in a bar and then in a bar.
Let's not forget people.
Yes,
in a bar.
They met in a bar and then they like hooked up. And I think they kind of talked for literally like a couple weeks. Well, her mom found out she was 15 years old. However, she was in a fucking bar and my friend got charged.
And she didn't get in trouble, right?
No. And my friend he has to be a registered sex offender. He did not have jail time, but it's called statutory rape. And so because he slept with or had sexual contact with somebody under the age of 18 when he was 21, this
is why I date older.
But that's what I'm saying. So I want to make it clear we already know, I don't know what Brian did, but we know Joseph, we know Joseph is the worst kind of sex offender. We know Jesse is the worst kind of sex offender. I'm assuming Brian is also the worst kind of sex offender because they all met in a facility that was literally provided to them for treatment and incarceration of repetitive and compulsive male sex offenders. That is not where a statutory rape person would end up, right? But I wanted to make that clear for a minute because I realized I said no sex offenders should live together, and I guess that it would
I still kind of stand by that.
I do, but I don't because
I feel like a certain level because there's different levels. Yes,
that's what I was just gonna say. I guess I should say the higher level sex offenders. I don't remember. I'm pretty sure that a level 1 sex offender is like statutory rape and like showing your
pulling
body
you down
parts.
your pants.
Yeah, like there's level 1, and then I think level 2 and 3. I don't think they should be allowed to cohabitate at all. So, anyways, back to what we were saying. So they decide they're going to, okay, well, first of all, we have cause to search your house now because you are a registered sex offender along with other sex offenders. There's a little girl missing and she lives across the street. So when they go into the home, they actually find that there are some cut up strips of cloth that are in like one of the garbage bins. And this is actually the garbage bin that Jesse typically would be the one that was in charge of. Now, they bring Megan's mother to show her this cut up material that they find. And she says that is literally Megan's shorts that cut up. Like that is the material. That is the shorts she was wearing this afternoon. So then they're like, oh, okay, let's take a better look. And so they do end up also finding bloodstains, hair, and fiber samples somewhere, somehow in this house. So Jesse is obviously taken in. He's interviewed by the police, and he actually initially denies having any knowledge of what happened to Megan. And he's basically telling them,
all do.
Right. He's basically like, yeah, I don't know. And they're like, well, how did this shit get in your house? Yeah, I don't know. Like, I don't know. Now, again, his roommates have solid ass alibis. So he's literally the only one that could be the reason why this shit was there. He does eventually actually admit to murdering Megan. And he actually leads the police to her body in nearby Mercer County Park. And her body is found July 30th of 1994. So just to reiterate, because I said it so gosh dang long ago, she was disappeared the 29th. So it was like probably less than 24 hours by the time they got everything looked at and whatever. So thankfully. Now they do find a bite mark on Megan's hand, and that actually does match Jesse's teeth as well. Jesse basically tells detectives that he had asked Megan if she wanted to come into his house to see his new puppy. And once she came inside, he slapped her and then he sexually assaulted her. And he said that he strangled her to keep her from telling her mother that he had touched her. Now, he also admitted that he had spent time watching Megan play outside. And he said that when he did, his palms would get really sweaty and his heart would race. So this is obviously something that he was definitely struggling. So May of 1997, Jesse is officially charged and tried for the intentional murder, felony kidnapping, 4 counts of aggravated sexual assault, and 2 counts of felony murder for this incident, which is crazy that they had 8 counts. They came up with 8 counts of shit.
I mean, good.
Yeah.
But that's a lot.
And he is found guilty of all of them.
Good. He should be.
Yes. And he is actually sentenced to death for this.
You know, don't know how I feel about that. Because on one hand, I kind of want your ass to rot in prison.
Don't worry.
Fuck it. I swear to God, if you tell me he gets out, I'm walking out of this room and we're not talking.
No, he does not get out.
Good.
Now, his sentence is actually appealed, and the New Jersey Supreme Court upholds the sentence. They're like, listen, he fucking kidnapped, murdered, sexually assaulted this girl. And she was 7. So, no, this stands. So then on December 17th, 2007, New Jersey legislature actually abolished capital punishment in the state of New Jersey, meaning they took the death penalty away. So Jesse's sentence was commuted to a life sentence without the possibility of parole. So he is in prison for the rest of his life. No chance of paroling at all. Now, Jesse is currently still serving his sentence in the New Jersey State Prison. I looked him up personally because when I do these stories, I do try to find and make sure they're still in prison. Because when I do my research, some of the stories are from like 3 years ago. You never know. Something had changed. No, he's there. He's there, and it shows no release date, no chance. And it shows all of his charges and all that stuff. So he is still in prison, and he will die in prison, which he should. What has happened since this story? This is why this was important to talk about. So normally, this is the part where I would end the story, right? And I would be like, oh, thanks, have a good day. But there is more to this particular story. And I like these kind of stories because her family helped create something good out of this horrible situation. So Richard and Maureen Kanka had lived in that neighborhood for 16 years before this happened. And they had no idea that a house full of sex offenders lived across the street from them. And so they said that if they had known that there were sex offenders that lived across the street, they would have never let Megan play by herself outside. Ever. She would have always been supervised. Fucking amen, right? Now, not long after the death of Megan, the Kankas decided that they wanted to push change on the fact that they had no idea that these sex offenders lived across the street. So they, along with the support of a bunch of other peoples, pushed for a law to be created that would mandate community notification if a sex offender were to move in across, like into a neighborhood, called Megan's Law. Now, in
holy shit, I didn't even think about that.
Yeah, that's why when you were talking, because Megan's
That's
Law is the
wild.
reason why you have to get notified now.
That's wild.
Yeah.
Also, I didn't realize that was so not recent, but like
it is fairly recent when you think about it.
But
it's
I mean,
like 21 years ago.
It's something that was like it wasn't started in like the 40s,
how
50s,
well,
60s,
and
you know
that's
what I
the
mean?
thing.
Like it's
how is it not? How did it take? I mean, it was
till
only
the 90s.
Till the 90s before somebody was like, "Oh, we should let people know." I mean, how does that even stand?
Which is
but whatever.
Crazy to think about.
Right. So in October of 1994, New Jersey actually signed a law into place requiring just that. So in October, so remember, this happened in July. You got to remember this happened in July. So you figure July, it was the end of July. So August, September. So if you think about it, it only took them 3 months to put this into law after she passed away, which I think is fucking
That's
amazing.
great. That's the same with like when the whole Amber Alert thing.
Yes. Amazing.
It was it's similar to that.
And her family was the push behind this, and that's why it was called Megan's Law. So they actually signed that into place in October of 1994. So in New Jersey, just New Jersey though, if there was a sex offender moving into a neighborhood, they were required by law to somehow let the neighborhood know via flyers, via whatever. Now, the Kinkas did not stop there. They did not stop there. They actually wanted other states to have the same type of laws in place. They did not want this to happen to anybody else. As a matter of fact, Richard and Maureen said on 2 different occasions. At one point they said, we have said all along that no law is going to prevent every sexual assault on children. But if it saves one child, it will be worth it. So that was one part of it. And then they also have said in the past, like, I have no problem opening my heart and crying and being personal with strangers as long as I can open somebody else's eyes. So their whole point is that this is a horrific story, but they're willing to share it. They're willing to speak candidly about it if it means saving your children. As a matter of fact, Maureen actually had said to people, don't sugarcoat what happens to children who are sexually assaulted by pedophiles. She said, do not sugarcoat it. Don't make it seem like, oh, no. She's like, tell them what happened. Be honest with them. Tell them the bad things that will happen and make them scared to go with strangers and make them scared to be around people that they don't know. And I actually agree with that. I'm not a sugarcoater. I never have been. My entire life raising my kids, I do not sugarcoat shit because I think sugarcoating leads to really bad and upset because you have high expectations for something that just probably isn't real. So I'm very realistic. I always have been with my kids. So I agree with
like
that.
every Disney trip the kids get to go.
What?
Like that. She doesn't sugarcoat it. She says, you guys are adults.
I do.
You can pay for yourself.
I do. I mean, for fuck's sake.
We're still the children.
For fuck's sake, when Sierra was little, like 4th grade, she fell and sprained her ankle.
Oh my God.
This is what I mean by I don't sugarcoat. I'm not going to run over and baby you because you made it. And it was her mistake, by the way. She rode her brother's bike, which was too small for her. And I specifically said, don't ride your brother's bike. And I got the
death wobble.
She got the death wobble. She falls. Her brother comes running in. He's like literally in like 2nd grade. Mom, Sierra fell off of her bike and she can't get up. And I was like, okay, whatever. So I go outside.
I thought that shit was broken.
I go outside. I don't
have
have shoes on. We have a gravel driveway at this point. I go outside and she's crying and she's laying on the ground in the driveway. And I looked at her and I said, get up and come here. And she was like, I can't. I go, well, then I guess you're just going to be stuck in the driveway. I said,
you turn around, start walking upstairs and you're like, well, when you come up here, we can go to urgent care. But until you come up here, you can just sit there.
And guess what she did?
I think
she got up and walked and then we realized she sprained the shit out of her ankle really bad.
Yeah. That was
However, I was not going to baby her because she did the one thing I told her not to do. And she got hurt. And you know what? She didn't break it. She could walk. And that was actually, to be fair, that's the way I parent. That's how I've always been. My reason for telling her that was because if she really couldn't get up and walk, she wouldn't have. She would not have. And then I would have gone and taken her in. But we
bitching about I have to go get my shoes and now I have to bring you to the fucking doctor.
No, I wouldn't. If you genuinely, well, I never called you an idiot. I called your dad an idiot, but not you. But when if she would have tried to get up and fallen, I would have absolutely been like, "Don't move. I'm gonna go get my shoes." And I would have
said, "Call triple."
I would have been.
Not AAA. What the fuck is it?
I've fallen and I can't.
Yeah, whoever that is.
I don't know. So
not fucking AAA.
I would have done it. But that's what I mean. Like, I didn't sugarcoat. I never did as they were growing up. I've never been the type to be like, I don't tiptoe around subjects with my kids, and I most definitely don't set them up to think that the life is that
Well,
life
you don't
is
hide the
easy.
fucking reality of life.
That's what I'm saying. And that's what her
life
mom,
isn't peachy keen.
that is
people.
what Megan's mom was saying, is she was like, don't like, stranger danger is a good thing, but
That's what movies are for.
But in school, it's like stranger danger and people think it's kind of funny. It's like, no, tell your kids it's not funny.
No, you
stranger
drop your
danger
fat
is not
ass
funny.
and you yell fire.
Exactly. Because you tell your kids, if somebody tries to take you, drop on the ground, go dead weight, yell fire, and then that's all you tell them. No, you explain to them, because if somebody gets you and kidnaps you, the worst thing that could happen is they're going to kill you. They could hurt you. They could touch you inappropriately. You be honest with them, and your kids will actually listen to you. So anyways, they were very much the reason why Megan's Law is where it's at. In May 17th of 1996, President Bill Clinton actually signed into law the federal version of Megan's Law.
Well, that's kind of ironic.
Well, it is
fucking Clinton.
It is.
Signed it.
It is, but
that's not funny. I know it's not funny, but that's just fucking ironic.
Now, this version of the law required that states, they could set their own law on mandatory reporting, but all states
still were
required to have some sort of registry available to the public. So it could literally be like you have a website that's public.
I think ours is a website.
No, ours actually, you get one in the mail. If somebody is within a certain radius of your house, you will get
one right over there.
Yeah, but they've lived here for a long time.
No, but I found him on a website.
We have a website, but when somebody moves into the area that is a sex offender.
That's right, because didn't I just get something in the mail?
Yes,
yeah,
that's within a certain radius.
I forgot about that.
Now, so that was the version of the federal law, though, is that every state has to have some sort of public knowledge of people's homes. Of registered sex offenders' houses. What I don't understand is what fucking state would not send out notification. Like, what kind of a state are you to not send out a notification? What? You're telling me like you wouldn't? You would just make one? No. You send it out. The point of this, though, was so that everybody knew if a sex offender lived in a neighborhood. That's literally the point. Because up until
a safety reason.
Well, up until 1994, it was not public knowledge.
You had no fucking idea.
Exactly.
You could have They could have been the best neighbors of your life.
Exactly. So
just to groom your children.
So here's some information about this. So now, according to the Rape, Abuse, and Incest Network, 59% of child sex abuse is done by acquaintances of the victim. Let that sink in for a minute. That's 59% are people who somehow know this person, and 34% of those are family members.
Mm-hmm.
Now, Megan's Law will allow people to know who has access to their children. So, given the majority,
so like you'd be able to know. So you'd know if it's like Uncle Bill.
Yeah. You would. Well, you would, yes. I mean, I would assume you might know prior to that if it's your family.
No, but I'm just saying, like, what that's saying is, like, you'll be able to know that connection, like how they know you, I guess.
Yeah, well, here you go. So it says, this is one of their quotes. So given the majority of child sex abuse cases are committed by someone that a child knows, a family member, a coach, a neighbor, a teacher, etc. So that's where it comes into play.
Somebody that's comfortable.
Your family, sure, you probably will know, but like if you... School? You guys did sports. So when you go into sports, you don't always know the coaches right away, right? So if any of your coaches were a sex offender, you would have the ability to find that information out now. And coaches, in my opinion, are one of the ones that I
remember the gymnastic thing?
He was the doctor, though. He was the doctor of the gymnastics team.
I mean, that's a good example, though.
Exactly.
You'd be able to...
Well, or
if he was charged before, but I'm just saying, like,
well, even I can't remember what college it was. I thought it was Stanford, but I don't think it was. But there was a coach who coached football who sexually assaulted multiple of his players, and it was for years and fucking years. And it's like you would not. I mean, I don't think he was a registered sex offender prior to that, but however, now, I mean, I think he died, but basically,
regardless, when
if
that
you
happens
get caught
now,
and you're a
fucked.
sex offender, if you if you're a sex offender, you probably aren't a teacher because you won't get hired
legally,
into a school
you shouldn't
teacher.
be.
However, if you are, but coaching is a different scenario. Neighbors are a different scenario. You can't control who is your neighbor and who coaches your children if you're just signing up for some random, program. They're saying when we limit the access of sexual predators to children, we can protect more children. And that's true. So by having this Megan's Law out here, it's
It's just
it's
one
showing,
piece of the giant ass
well, and
puzzle in that
when you think
disgusting
about the
group.
math of it, 59% of the people who are
That's
of
over
child
fucking
abuse.
half.
But if you have the ability to weed those people out,
No, I know.
you can. That's kind of what their point
I'm
is.
just saying that's crazy that it's over
It
over
is.
half the people in your life that you would know, that your child knows,
Could be
a sex offender.
So
in
now
some fashion.
Megan's Law was actually the starting off point for more protective laws being put into place. So after Megan's Law, they did the federal Adam Walsh Child Protection and Safety Act of 2006. So it's kind of been like a trickle down effect of like when something happens to a child, Amber Alert, you know, those kind of things. This is like the jumping off point. These parents took a fucking horrific incident that happened in their life and they wanted to save other kids. So Adam Walsh is John Walsh's son, and John Walsh is a guy who created a show, America's Most Wanted, way back in the day. Like I watched it as a kid all the time, and his son was kidnapped and killed, and he took his son's kidnapping and murder and turned it into a huge thing. America's Most Wanted is not just for children, you know, killers
I think
of
that's
children.
still around. It's just not as popular.
But it was a way
I
for
think. I don't
basically
know.
to try to solve crimes. And that show did solve crimes because they would share stories and share people. And
I remember as like a kid seeing like 1 or 2 episodes
right.
of it.
So that's what I'm saying. Like Megan's Law was kind of the jumping off point for all these things. Now on February 8th of 2016, the international Megan's Law was signed into effect by President Obama. So we started out with New Jersey's Megan's Law to a United States federal, thank you, a federal Megan's Law, and now there's an international Megan's Law.
So you're talking like even in other countries and shit?
So yes. So what the international, well, it's not yes and no. So what the international Megan's Law does is it prevents child exploitation and other sexual crimes through advance notification of traveling sex offenders. And this was signed into law by President Obama. What this does is it makes it mandatory that a registered sex offender reports international travel prior to departure, meaning that they can't, if they're a sex offender and they live in the United States and they want to go to France, they have to actually
like France has to basically say it's okay for you to come here. Or?
They have to mandatorily let like their, like just even for a vacation, they have to let like their whoever probation officer, whoever they contact, the police department, let them know that they're going out of the country for a couple of weeks and where they're going to be.
Basically, like you're saying, it has to be notified that you're doing international travel.
They have to, because think about it. If you go to like I said,
if you
France,
commit a fucking crime in France,
if you go to France and then all of a sudden like a child is molested there, now
ding,
ding, exactly,
you're on the radar.
So it requires that. But what it also does is now there's a notice of conviction of sex offenses against a child on their passports. So you know how now in the United States you have to have either a passport or a real ID?
Like
So anybody who's a sex offender, on their passport, there is literally it's kind of big for the it's not tiny, and it literally says this person has been convicted of sex offense against a minor, and it's on their passports. So when they go into countries, some countries, I'm assuming, could not let you in because they look at your passports and they have to decide whether you can come into their country or not. So this makes it,
if I ran a country, you'd never step foot in here.
I'm saying.
And also, if you committed the crime here, get the fuck out of my country.
So these are the impacts that has actually come out of this. That's huge. Like the protection is amazing. Now, here's what's really super crazy to me is that people actually have a problem with these laws. They have a problem with the Megan's Law, international, federal, and state levels.
Because people are fucking dumb.
What they say is that it violates the civil liberties of sex offenders. Hold on. They said it violates their civil liberties of sex offenders. It poses challenges to the sex offender's rehabilitation, and it consists of basically a second punishment for the same crime. Now, this is what I have to say about that. The minute you become a sex offender or a pedophile, you lose all your fucking rights.
But you
lose your rights to privacy when you literally used privacy as a way to hide your pedophilia. You don't get to have privacy anymore.
When
I don't give two shits.
Destroy those kids' lives or actually take their lives.
Absolutely.
They're fucking 5, 7.
You'll never get sympathy from me. You'll never hear me say that I think it's unfair. One of the things that the defense attorneys that is against this has actually said, like, yeah, but due to Megan's Law, sex offenders' homes have been burned down. sex offenders.
I'm sorry that you're a piece of shit.
Well, I'm not okay with that, to be honest with you. I'm not okay with that because here's the thing. If we can't be civil fucking people, then they will they will overturn the law. They'll make it to where Megan's law is not legal anymore. We, as a people that are not sex offenders, we need to use the notification system exactly what it's meant for, which is to raise awareness to us that a sex offender is in the neighborhood. It does not mean you get to go and vandalize their home.
It's the problem.
You
honestly,
can't do that.
It makes me think of any other problem that has been fucking, I swear to God, ever in the United States, because there's a reason as to why it got started, right? And there's a story behind it. But the fucking society has taken it way off topic and has turned it bad, and so now it's a problem.
Well, and in this case, you can't go...
So I'm saying, like, people are never happy with it.
In this case, you cannot go vandalize somebody's house because you don't like what they did. You just fucking can't do that. And never mind the fact that the people that are out, unfortunately, in the world we live in, they serve their time. So you can't keep treating them like shit over what they did in the past, right? You just can't
But
do
I'm
that.
sure it makes being a parent especially even scarier.
Listen, I'm a parent, and when my kids were younger, if I had any inkling that a sex offender lived across the street from me, I would not go knock on their door, and I would not yell at them every day. I would not vandalize their property. I would not be mean to them. I would just ignore them. And then I would make sure that my kids are always supervised when they're outside. And I would teach my children, don't talk to the neighbor because he did bad things, and I would explain what he did.
Is my neighbor.
I would never in a million years think that it was okay to attack or vandalize somebody. I just don't understand. That makes me no better. That makes us no better. When we are given the opportunity to know public knowledge, hey, there's a sex offender in the neighborhood. Well, the minute we start using that as ammunition to start abusing and belittling and vandalizing and hurting people, they're going to take that law away because it's putting them in harm. Why are we giving the satisfaction? That's satisfaction to them because now they're the victims. You've just made them the victims. So for me, I'm like, no, we don't get to victimize. They don't get to be victims. But what they do get is they can be ostracized. We can ignore them. They can be completely ignored and felt, I don't have a problem treating you as if you don't exist, which is exactly what should be happening. So that's why there's people who have a problem with these laws, is because the laws single-handedly point you in the direction to the address of somebody who is a pedophile. There are people who have literally showed up in a neighborhood because, they're new to the neighborhood, they're sex offenders, and literally they're beaten, like they're jumped.
Don't get me wrong. People
That's
take
not
it
okay.
out of proportion.
That's what I'm saying is they would not have a leg. These defense attorneys that are against the Megan's Law would not have one fucking leg to stand on if people just did what they were supposed to, which was take the knowledge, lock it in your brain, teach your children to stay away from that person, and keep your eyes peeled. That's all you can do.
I get that. I'm more so saying the ones that are like, it's against their civil right. Fuck your civil right. Because
I agree.
And
I
the
totally
privacy thing. Like, that's what I'm saying.
They don't
like,
get privacy.
You don't get
privacy.
This. You're that bad of a person. You
No,
don't get the right
agree.
to have a peachy keen life, bro.
No, I totally agree with you.
Absolutely not.
Now, these laws, the Megan laws, all three of the Megan's laws, like the international and the federal and the state levels, they've all been challenged in court multiple times as being unconstitutional and trying to get them overturned. To this day, the laws actually still remain in effect. But like I said, if we're not careful with how we use these laws, every time somebody attacks a pedophile because they're a pedophile, not because they did anything, but because they're a pedophile, you have now given one more strike against why Megan's Law should.
You're giving them more ammo as to
right, and I don't want that to happen. I think Megan's Law is probably one of the most brilliant things, and it blows, like I said, it blows my mind.
Lives.
It blows my mind. It took this long. It took that long for somebody to come up with that.
Yeah,
but my point of this story was
that's what, 30 years old, 31.
31. So it was only 31 years ago that we came up with, which is crazy because pedophilia has been around for much longer than that. So it's weird to me that it took this, but.
And I feel like the way to be able to inform people that there was a pedophile living in your area, even without internet, could have happened 100%. Well before that too.
Absolutely. Mail.
I was going to say, we get the mails.
Letters,
we get mail stuff. So.
And that's kind of the point of Megan's family is they're literally like, had we known that there was a sex offender.
Yeah, they're basically saying like there was no way to know, and we could have.
Honestly, she'd probably be alive today. because she would have never been.
think she'd
she
be alive.
would not have been outside by herself.
However, and this is going to be morbid of me to say, yes, she would be alive, but there could be another kid dead because of him as well.
Yeah, except for if the whole neighborhood knew, then he'd have no choice but to keep to his fucking self, which is what they should be doing when they are sex offenders. So that's my point. Is like, obviously something needed to be done, but again, I like stories like this because they took this horrific situation and they mourn by the way, they have more than one child, so they do have other children, and they had to move on, right? They had to find a way to move on and create something. And how do you do that? Well, you want to protect your other kids too. And so for them to come up with Megan's Law and not only have it be implemented at the state level and then the federal level and now international, it's fucking brilliant. And I just hope that we continue to see progress forward in things like this, because unfortunately, child sex abuse is a very real problem. Sex trafficking is a very real problem. And we can't obviously combat all of it. We cannot stop all of it. But every little piece of thing that we do helps. I truly believe that Megan's Law, as it sits right now, has single-handedly saved multiple children from being victims of sex abuse, because when parents pay attention to the letters in the mail, or they pay attention to the warnings that a sex offender has moved into their neighborhood, they become more heightened and more alert, and they make different choices than what they would have had they not known. So I do think that it's 100%. It's not a good story, obviously, but I'll be pretty pissed
if that shit ever gets changed.
It's got the best ending you could possibly have for the situation that we heard.
Agreed.
But yeah, so it was funny when you said that about when you were like, you have to tell people. I was like, but at the time, you did not.
But again, when you said the time frame, I was thinking like, oh yeah, like, how is this possible? Because like, he should have registered, because it's been my whole life, right?
He was registered
because I was born in 2000, so it's been my whole life that
and
you
he did register. He was a registered.
Notify like
but
your
they did,
neighborhood.
Exactly,
is what
but
I mean.
They didn't do the notification process.
I would say because 2000 to 2025, I mean, my whole life.
Yep.
If there's a sex offender in our neighborhood, we know about it,
and it's because of Megan's Law that you do.
Just so crazy,
isn't that?
And then as soon as you said, like, when you said her name too,
you're like, ding ding, bitch.
Like, it didn't even click till you said Megan's Law, and I was like,
what's really funny?
No shit.
What's really funny is actually, I didn't even know that Megan's Law was from Megan.
From Megan.
I had been researching different things to do. This happened to pop up, and as I researched, I said, holy shit, it's Megan's
Listen,
Law.
It's the same with Amber Alert. I didn't actually know that Amber Alert was because the kid's name was Amber. Like, I didn't realize that some of these laws and things that they do, when it has that name, I never realized that somebody or that person.
So that is the story of Jesse Timmendequas, who is a piece of garbage human, but due to his piece of garbageness, Megan's Law was created. So that's pretty much how it goes.
And listen, I'm actually not sad that they overturned the death penalty and he didn't get the death penalty, because when or at least from what I've heard, I've never been to jail, never been to prison, but from what I've heard, if you're somebody that commits a crime in any fashion and it's child related, your fucking prison life is hell.
Yeah,
so I'm actually okay with that.
I have a feeling he's probably in more of a segregated area, so it's probably very lonely, and
I say put him in Gen Pop.
Deservedly so. So if you like what you're hearing, if you like the crime bitches, which you obviously do because you sat through the whole damn thing, we appreciate you. Thank you very much. Make sure you're following us on whatever platforms you listen to us on. It'll let you know every Tuesday when we have a new episode drop, like this one. And other than that, I think I'm just going to say, as per usual, catch you on the flip side, bitches.
Bye, bitches.